Okay, we're recording. So I wanted to welcome you today and let you know that we will be talking about science as inquiry. And I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully you can see everything. And there we go. Okay, so what does it mean when we talk about science inquiry? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So these are our learning objectives. Again, applying standards, early learning standards, applying the nature of scientific knowledge, unifying concepts of science, and characteristics of science inquiry. Okay, so when we think about scientific inquiry, we want to think about these different things. So it should start with a question: what can be discovered? We also want our students to observe things. So what do they notice before, during, and after the activity? We also want to be able to define things. What is the problem? What is being explored? And focus, what is the main question to be answered? We want to give them opportunities to investigate what can be researched beforehand. Develop, what do you believe will happen? What is your hypothesis? Carrying it out, what are the steps that you're going to take to answer the main question? Examination, what connections and conclusions can be drawn? Reflection, what can you do to find out more? We always want to bring our students back to reflecting. And communicating, what can be shared with others about the findings? So it's not inquiry if students know the results they're supposed to get, so that's not supposed to happen. And it's not inquiry if the questions and steps are predetermined for them. If they're told take specific steps, this is exactly what you do, and then you'll get this result. That's not inquiry. And it's not inquiry if the teacher is working harder than the students. Now, of course, teachers work hard to set up inquiry, science as inquiry, set up the environment so that students can then take part in science as inquiry. But then once it's set up, it's actually the teacher is the facilitator, the questioner, not the person who is providing the answers. So that's really, really important when we think about science as inquiry. I'm sorry, I can't seem to say that word today. And here are some these are some myths about inquiry-based learning, that it's hands-on experience equals inquiry. That is not the case. That inquiry means students just do whatever they want. That is also a myth. That inquiry, that learning objectives ruin inquiry, but no, absolutely not. There's not enough time to allow students to take part in this. And that this isn't made for all students. That's another myth. So the truths about inquiry-based learning are that inquiry is a student-centered experience. So something can be hands-on, but not student-centered. So think of it that way. You can give students a hands-on project to do, but then you give them the directions, you tell them every step to take. That, again, is not inquiry-based learning. The teacher's role is critical. So it's not that the teacher isn't needed. The teacher is needed to set the environment up beforehand, to facilitate the environment during the inquiry, and then at the end to ask questions to encourage students to continue thinking and reflecting and researching. The third truth is that learning objectives let everyone know where they are going. So that is something, you know, before you do anything, even virtually or face-to-face with students, you should let them know the learning objectives that they're working on. You can say those things and place those things in your classroom or on even in your virtual classroom in kid-friendly language. So even if you're working with kindergarteners or first grade students, pre-reading students, you can give them the objectives even with words and pictures of what the learning objective is to help pre-readers. And then also read it out to them and let them know. So this is, you know, we're going to be doing this inquiry-based learning, but these are the learning objectives that we're focusing on. With inquiry-based learning, we need to prioritize. So basically, we can find time to fit these things in. Also, you can find ways to integrate things like language arts and mathematics and art all into your science projects as well. And then inquiry is for all students. All students can have opportunities to learn and discover and ask questions. Regardless, we may have to differentiate and accommodate for students, but they all can take part in inquiry learning. Oh, okay, so we're going to talk about inquiry science and the 5E model. This is a video that's also embedded within our course, so I'm not going to run it right now. I'm going to just ask you to go ahead and look at this model, and I'm sorry, this video within our course. So how do we make the content meaningful? So research suggests that 3 to 8-year-olds are far more confident in the realm of science understanding than previously known. This is something that I've learned being a pre-kindergarten teacher and a kindergarten teacher, that students will surprise you with their knowledge and with their interests and the content that they know if you let them. So be open to finding out what our students know and be surprised. It'll be a fun surprise to know the things that they know, especially if they're really interested in a certain topic. For example, and I think I've used this many times, even with my children, like my son, my youngest son, basically was really interested in whales, and he would come up with these things about whales, and I had no idea about the things that he knew about whales. So these are things that, again, if teachers are aware of this, they can take those students and say, hey, you know, we're talking about whales. So, and I know an expert in our class who can share some information about this. So it's really fun that we can kind of find out what our students love. And I remember my daughter being in first grade and coming home and telling me that she had to do a project about rocks. So I was helping her. She just told me everything that she needed to do: collect the rocks, you know, examine the rocks, do stuff like take pictures and create different things for this final project. And then I find out that it's actually not a final project, that it was just something she was doing in school that she wanted to keep doing at home. That's what we want to see happen with our children. And inquiry science can absolutely allow those kind of things to continue. So develop units from circumstances in the classroom, in school, you know, things that the children are going through. Right now with COVID is a great time to kind of think of situations that students can do some inquiry about. I love this. Okay, so this is Vicki Cobb. Again, this is another video that you're going to take a look at. I'm just doing this presentation in the beginning of the module, so you know the kind of things that you're going to look at. Learning science is something students do and not something that is done to them. Learning science is something students do and not something that is done to them. And we have to remember this, that science should be action and inquiry and research and discovery that students are doing, not that we're doing to them. Now, there are times for teacher demonstrations and hands-on activities that have specific directions. but I really do want you to think about how do we make it more of a discovery and less teacher directed and more student centered as we teach young children about science. And again, we said this earlier in one of the myths that, some people think that, okay, well, science inquiry is just hands-on. It's different. It lasts weeks or even months. It gives children a voice, and it provides them with a way to explore questions. And I love this picture right here. Question the answers. We want to develop students and people that question the answers. They don't just take an answer and say, okay, it is because I was told. They question it. If something doesn't make sense, they try to make sense of it. They respect science. They listen to science. They explore. They research. They do all these kind of things themselves. That's what we want to develop in our young children. So what can we learn by watching and listening to young children? To me, I think that was probably my favorite thing to do as an early childhood educator of pre-kindergartners and kindergartners, was to listen to them as they interact with others and as they do projects. So as a teacher, you'll also have a background presence. You always want to kind of be paying attention to what they're saying, and you're a facilitator. Vygotsky talks about private speech, that when we listen to young children, many times they talk out loud while they're playing. Even if they're playing alone or figuring something out, they use words. We can learn a lot by that private speech of what children are learning, what they're thinking, and I think that's really important. These are things that you can take as an observation, as data, and say, make a note, an anecdotal record about, as the child was building, they were saying such and such, and you can talk about how they're learning. So, and when we watch, we could also look and see how we can scaffold. So can we scaffold by throwing out some questions of deeper thinking? And I'm going to share an example of deeper thinking questions that I've found really helpful, because, they want teachers to be intentional about getting children to think deeper, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard to think of, okay, how do we do this? But if you had access to samples of deeper thinking questions, it could make things easier. And I will share those resources with you. And also, what do they know? We can find that out by listening and watching. And these are our resources. So this is a book that I used as well. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.